We'll go to the gentleman in the black blazer here in the second row, please.
Thank you. Barzansa, reporter from Kurdistan 24. On the Middle East, Iranian regime behind most of the conflict because they have so many militia in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon. Just a few weeks ago, has been attacked U.S. bases in Jordanian and also in Erbil city, the capital of the Iraqi Kurdistan region. And this kind of attack has been again and again. And also you have so many soldiers right now in Iraq. They are training the Iraqi forces. Don't you think this is the time to building the air defense system in Iraq or in North Iraq? Thank you.
Well, what we see is that Iran continues its destabilizing policies across the Middle East, including support to different militia groups and terrorist groups. We have made it clear that Iran should rein in its proxies. Of course, we condemn the attacks we have seen on US forces across different countries in the Middle East, in Jordan, in Iraq and Syria. And you're right that NATO has a presence in Iraq with our mission there. We help the Iraqis to build capacity to ensure that ISIS does not return. And we work with Iraq on many different, in many different areas. And of course, anything that can help them also to defend against air strikes is important for Iraq and important for forces deployed in Iraq.
We'll go to Bloomberg, back here, lady in the pink scarf, please.
Natalia Drozdiak, thank you for the question. I just wanted to follow up on Ramstein and what NATO's role might be in Ramstein going forward. Are there any discussions within the alliance about what could be done to ensure that Ukraine, aid for Ukraine is insulated from allies' elections over the coming years? Thanks so much.
So we are constantly, since the start of this war, we have discussed how to best organize our support. But the most important thing is actually not the framework we have around the support, but the most important thing is that NATO allies make the decisions to provide support, regardless of what kind of framework that support is provided through. My main focus remains, when I meet NATO allies, to ensure that they continue to make the political decisions needed to provide weapons, ammunition, spare parts, maintenance, training, and also financial support. And through different frameworks, bilaterally, through the NATO Comprehensive Assistance Package, through the European Union, and through joint efforts, different allies together, they have provided unprecedented military, economic, and humanitarian support. And I count on and expect that NATO allies will continue to do so. This is a truly example of transatlantic burden sharing, because if you put together economic support and military support, actually European allies and Canada are providing more support than the United States. The United States is, of course, vital when it comes to military support, and I count on the United States to continue its military support. But it is important to realize that this is actually European allies and Canada and the United States together. Canada provides training, provides also equipment and ammunition, and then European allies and the United States is doing the same in different formats.
Time for just one or two more. We'll go to Face TV in row 4, please. Next.
Yeah, thank you. Do you still see a threat of a spillover of instability into the Western Balkans as a result of the ongoing war in Ukraine? And what do you see as a concrete chances for a negotiated solution to that conflict? Thank you.
So we have seen increased tensions in Kosovo and in other parts of the Western Balkans over the last months. I visited the region just before Christmas. My main message is that all sides should refrain from inflammatory rhetoric and any actions that can further escalate the tensions in the region. And when it comes to Kosovo, the way forward is the EU-facilitated dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina, and I encourage both Pristina and Belgrade to engage in good faith in that dialogue. As a result of the attacks and the violence we have seen in Kosovo last year, or we saw last year in Kosovo, NATO allies have increased their presence. The KFOR mission is there. It's there to ensure a safe and secure environment for all communities, and we have added roughly 1,000 extra troops to ensure that we can continue to live up to and deliver on our UN mandate.
And final question, Dmitry Shurko, Ukrainian News Agency, in the third row, please, here.
Thank you for the floor. Dmitry Shurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. In the public domain, Russia is openly threatening to the West and to the NATO allies with a hybrid threats and warfare. Will the minister consider such kind of non-military threats, like we see now, for instance, in a Russian-Finnish border with a refugee flow, or maybe some tensions and violent protests on the border between Poland and Ukraine, from the point of view of internal security and stability, and in particular of the military mobility. And if I may, short follow-up, we are approaching the second anniversary of the beginning of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. What main lessons were drawn by the allies from that events? And you sometimes saying that the failure of Ukraine could be the great threat to European stability and Euro-Atlantic security. Do you really consider such kind of option of failure? Thank you.
So first, on the potential for different hybrid threats, well, of course, that's something we take very seriously. We don't see any imminent threat for any military attack against any NATO ally, but of course it's a constant risk for different hybrid attacks, cyber and other types of hybrid actions against NATO allies. And this is about improving our intelligence, it's about sharing intelligence, it's about working also with the civilian society, that the armed forces working with the rest of the society to address these threats, and that's something we are constantly doing. We are also exercising, and of course we are monitoring the situation along our border, the NATO border, the borders with Russia, to ensure that we don't that we react in an appropriate way to any challenges we see along the border with Russia. Then on the lessons learned, I think there are many lessons to be learned, but of course for NATO the most important lesson learned is that we need to stand together, because it's really the fact that European allies and Canada and United States together did two things when we faced the full-fledged invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The first thing we did was to agree to step up our support for Ukraine, and that support has made a significant difference on the ground. We have to remember that when the full-fledged invasion happened, most experts, or many experts, feared that Ukraine would collapse within days or weeks. The opposite happened. The Ukrainians have been able to retake 50% of their territory and inflict heavy losses on the Russian forces. The other thing that NATO did when the full-fledged invasion took place was to increase our military presence in the eastern part of the alliance and further increase the readiness of our forces and activate our defense plans. And we did so to communicate very clearly to Moscow that President Putin should not consider at all to escalate this conflict beyond Ukraine. And we did that, and we continue to do that by sending a clear message that we are there, NATO is there, with more troops in Romania, in the Baltic countries, in Poland, and higher readiness and bigger exercises. and also the increased defense spending. All of this is sending a message that we support Ukraine, but we also ensure that the conflict doesn't escalate beyond Ukraine into NATO territory and to a full-fledged war between Ukraine and Russia.
We have time for just one final one. Vege, over here on my right, please, behind the cameras.
Thank you. Alf Johnsen from VG. During your visit to Washington in January, you said you had the chance to talk to Republican leaders in both chambers of the Congress and also Republican-leaned think tanks. And in light to your talks there, was Trump's statement last week a surprise for you, or was it in line with what you heard during your stay in Washington?
So what I heard in Washington when I visited Washington, and rightly, as you said, I met many Republicans or representatives both in the House and in the Senate from both parties. The message and the broad agreement from all of them was strong support to NATO and strong support to Ukraine. And therefore I welcome the decision by the US Senate on an aid package to Ukraine, and I count on the House to agree or to find a way forward to ensure that Ukraine can continue to receive substantial military support for Ukraine, or from the United States to Ukraine. I think that we need to realize that a strong NATO is important for Europe, because it's obvious that the US troops in Europe, the American commitment to European security is essential to prevent any attack on European allies. But a strong NATO is also good for the United States, because through NATO, the United States has something no other NATO ally has, and that is, no other major power has, and that is more than 30 friends and allies in NATO. And that makes the United States stronger and safer. So it is in the national security interest of the United States to keep NATO strong. It is strong bipartisan support in the US Congress for NATO. And we have to listen and take note of the following. The criticism that we hear is not primarily about NATO. It's about NATO allies not spending enough on NATO. And that's a valid point. And it's a point and a message that has been conveyed by successive US administrations, that European allies and Canada have to spend more because we haven't seen fair burden sharing in the alliance. The good news is that that's exactly what NATO allies are doing. With a record high increase in defense spending last year, with now 18 allies spending 2% or more, and more allies are coming close to 2%, and I promise to be there very soon. And the fact that we now see record high spending across Europe, European allies, just highlights that this message have had an impact. European allies and Canada have stepped up, and I count on them to continue to do so. A strong NATO is also important for the United States because it makes the United States stronger. The United States have never fought a war alone. They always fight with allies, and that makes the United States stronger. From the Korean War to Afghanistan, NATO allies have been fighting shoulder by shoulder with US soldiers. And we have to remember that the only time we invoked Article 5 was after an attack on the United States. And in Afghanistan, 9/11, and hundreds of thousands of Canadian and European troops served in Afghanistan to protect the United States. And many of them paid the ultimate price. So that's the reason why there is strong support for NATO in the United States. Because they, of course, understand the same as the Europeans understand, that we are stronger together. And of course, the more concerned they are about China, the size of China, the more important it is to keep NATO strong. Because the United States represents 25% of the world GDP. Together with NATO allies, we represent 50% of the world economy and 50% of the world's military might. So, as long as we stand together, protect each other, we are safe, we prevent an attack, and we ensure that we are standing up for our values through a strong transatlantic bond.
That's all we have time for today, but we'll see you tomorrow for the ministerial. Thank you.
Thank you.